Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Next to None podcast. This week is going to be a little different again. It's just me, but I'm excited to talk about this subject because sometimes it's so overlooked. So we're going to talk about why personal core values matter in leaders. Gosh, I have thought about this so many times over the years and never really understood the value until I started leading a lot of people. And then I began to understand. So when I started my business, I tried to think of all the things that were going to be important to me about my business. And I just kept coming back to my core values. What were my core values? How did I define the things within me that were so important for me to then put into my business as well? And I ended up coming up with 6 of those. And why they were so important to me is because, we all show up a little bit differently every single day. But there's like this core piece of us that always shows up the same way every time. And some of those things are strong and some of those things aren't. But over time, we get stronger in those because we are confident in who we are and we know who we are. These 6 core values are how I run my business. Everything always points back to these 6 core values. The first one is integrity. Integrity means that I do what I say I'm going to do. I have a mentor who said, watch what people do, not what they say, because they say something and what they do doesn't line up. That means they don't have integrity because they're not doing the things that they say they were going to do. Now, don't misunderstand. There are some times where your intentions are great, but you don't always follow through. That doesn't mean that you don't have integrity. It just means you just weren't able to follow through for whatever the reasons were. But this is important for me because integrity is such an important piece for me when I work with clients, when I work with other people in the business and collaboration. It's just an important piece for me. The second one is wisdom. Wisdom means that I lead with discernment. I don't make decisions just on my own. I have other people that I connect with. My husband, for instance, he actually isn't a part of my business, but I always go back to my husband and ask his opinion. And then I have 3 advisors. One of them is a woman who is in her early 70s. She's been in business a long time and she's just brilliant and she has a lot of connections. So she understands business and it's someone that I can always bounce things off of. The other one is a woman that is killing it in what she does. Like she is making a lot of money. She's making a lot of connections and like she is doing speaking at large corporations and all over the world. And she is incredible. And she has a lot of experience that I need that I don't have, but I'm gaining. And then the last person is someone who is extremely creative, helps me brainstorm, come up with new crazy ideas. And sometimes they tell me when my ideas are just not that great. And I appreciate that because that's wisdom. Wisdom is finding the people that can help you make the right decisions for your business, whether it's people that you work for or work with, people that you work for, or even another business owner that has been where you are now. The third one is humility. Humility keeps me teachable. It helps me remember that I don't have all the answers and that I can look to others for help. And I am not scared of that. I think humility is one of the greatest things any leader can have because when you remain humble, you remain open. With humility, I've been that leader that's got it wrong. But I also was that leader that went back and asked for forgiveness and asked my team to help me be better. And I don't just lead through people. I just don't do it without them. An example of this is Chris Clymer with True North Creative. He's the one that edits my podcast, helps me create these videos for this. And there's times where we collaborate. I go to him. I'm like, hey, I'm thinking this. What do you think? We work together and try to come up with a good solution. That's humility, knowing that you don't have all the answers. My fourth one is gratitude. Gratitude is so important because it keeps me grounded. It keeps me remembering to not only celebrate the wins, but also not focus on the failures. I do believe that failures are what help us become winners, but I can't focus on that. I have to look at the positive because if I continuously look at the things that are not going right, things tend to continue to not go right. And so by having gratitude, I actually incorporate into my routine every day. Every morning, I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Like this morning, I'm grateful for my husband. He supports me in what I'm doing in my business, and he doesn't ever question things that I'm doing unless I specifically ask him. So he trusts me in my business, and he trusts me with what we're doing, even at home. So there's a balance in it all. Another thing that I was grateful for this morning is my children. My youngest son went to youth camp this week. He's gone for a week, and I'm thankful for that he had the opportunity to go to experience something that can be life-changing for him. And my oldest son, I'm just thankful for him because, he is at that stage where he's trying to figure out life and he's asking a lot of questions. And I'm grateful that he has parents that care about him and that he's asking those questions, trying to figure those things out. And then the last thing that I'm grateful for this morning is the fact that I have a business and I get to do my own schedule and I get the opportunity to meet incredible people like you and entrepreneurs and leaders all over the place, whether it's in Florida, whether it's in California, whether it's in Louisiana. I get to meet incredible leaders and entrepreneurs like you. My fifth core value is my faith. I call myself a Christ follower because I love the way that Jesus led. Jesus led with love and compassion and grace. He was able to rebuke when he needed to, but he also always edified others. And that's how I want to lead. I want to lead loving people where they're at and not expecting them to make changes because I say so, but because there's something in them that's calling them to do something different. And so that's important to me in my life. And it is a foundation for my family even. And so faith is super important to me in my business. I always want to be grounded in that. And last but not least, my sixth one, serving others. My coach told me when I first started my business, he's like, Amy, how are you going to bring value to people? And, I'm really intentional about when I meet with my clients or I meet with potential clients or even another business owner that's just struggling. I want to bring value to every conversation because I want to serve them in a way that they can then be successful. It's not about me. And this goes back to my other core value of humility. It's about me being able to help someone else thrive and be successful in what they're doing, or even a leader. There's so many leaders that I meet with, and some of them become clients, some of them don't, but they walk away with practical things that they can do to shift where they're struggling. And that's why I like serving others, is because I'm able to help people where they're at, not expecting them to be something that they're not, but just allowing them to be themselves so that I can help them in whatever challenge that they have. So the question is why are core values non-negotiable in leadership? Gosh, when I first started my business, this was not the first thing that I thought of. I thought of myself as a solopreneur. I didn't see myself as a leader when I first started my business. But the reality is oftentimes, and you heard another podcast guest and I talking about this, is that sometimes small business owners don't see themselves as executives or leaders. They just see themselves as a business owner. And you are both. You're in both a CEO seat and a business owner seat. Clarity and decision-making is the first one. When everything feels rushed and hurried, that's when you really need to go back to your core values and making sure that they align. The second one is trust and consistency. We've all been there. We've all had a leader at some point in time that maybe we didn't completely trust them, or maybe they just weren't consistent, which made it hard to trust them. And, there is something to say about that trust and consistency that not only brings about great success, but it also brings about, I know that I can go to you and say anything that I need to say to you. And there's consistency in how you respond and react and how you keep that. If I ask, you keep that in confidence. And that is pivotal in leadership. When you're leading teams, they crave consistency because they want predictable leadership. Now, predictable leadership is not always going to happen. That may mean sometimes that things change. But the great thing is you as a leader can then come and ask questions to understand, find out the why behind the what. When you have the why, it's a lot easier, even if it's outside of what is normal for that leader, you can understand why they're doing something different than what they normally do. So some might say, well, that's not predictable, but actually it is. There's going to be changes in business and there's going to be changes in processes and all those things. Those things are always going to come up. The important piece is to be predictable and consistent and your team being able to come to you and asking about the why behind the what. Like, you don't want your team to get to the point where if you just do what I say, not as I do type of thing, that's never going to create the consistency and the trust that you need. Another why is because we need leaders to be resilient. So resilient with your core values looks like this. If I say that humility is a core value for me, but I don't act that way, it's eventually going to show that my values are actually not aligned. And resilience means that even when I don't feel like being humble in a certain situation, or I'm not humble and somebody calls me out and I don't accept that, I'm not being very resilient in that. Or like when wisdom, like I am resilient in wisdom because I don't think I have it all together. I don't think that I have all the answers, and I seek things out from others, right? And that is something that I align back to every single time. Our core values are how we align our business or how we align our organization. And the important piece is that everything we do should always go back to those. I'm going to give you an example. My church, Two Rivers Church in O'Fallon, they have core values. And they talk about those all the time. I've heard the staff talk about how everything that they do gets pointed back to their core values. And if it doesn't align with that, they don't do it. And that to me is resilience. The last why is culture, your personal culture and your business and organizational culture. Culture is created by design, not by default. Well, I should say it can be created by default because it can just be created over time. But leaders usually create their personal core values, and those align with the organization in some way, shape, or form. If you're a business owner, your core values should align with your business values. If you're working in a corporate environment, or maybe you're looking for a job, I would really encourage you, look for a job and look at the business mission, their core values. Does that align for you? Because if it doesn't, and you just take a job to make money, guess what? You're going to be unhappy and you're probably not going to stay there. So be a leader that is intentional about what the culture of your business is, or one that you might be working for. And if it aligns with your personal core values, that's your why. So what are some warning signs that you're not leading out of your personal core values? Well, one of the ones that I can come back to is, I worked in an environment at one point in time, and the core values didn't align with mine in the organization. And what was happening is I became a version of myself that I didn't love. Why? Because I was adapting to their culture and I was adapting to their core values. And those core values didn't align with my personal core values. And what happened over time, I got burnt out. I was frustrated. I was operating out of frustration. I just became, and you all might relate to this. I got to a point where I just didn't even really want to go to work because I didn't feel like I could win. But the truth was, it was really on me because I wasn't working in an environment that aligned with my personal core values. One of the other things about that environment was I'm not necessarily a yes man. I'm going to challenge things as I see them in the right way. I'll ask questions to understand. And when you're in an environment where maybe it's an environment of yes men, you just need to say yes, Amy. You just need to say yes. Don't ask questions. Do what I tell you. Don't ask questions. Well, that doesn't work for me because that's part of the personality tendencies that I have, is to challenge things. And that's not a wrong thing. A lot of times, a lot of businesses or organizations will tell you, well, Amy, you shouldn't challenge. You're not the leader. Well, it goes back to some of the things that I talked about in my core values. Wisdom means that you ask questions. You try to learn. And it wasn't an environment that was healthy for me in that. If you're a business owner or a CEO or executive in an organization, how do you know if your culture is not aligning to your personal core values? And some of those things look like retention issues. Or maybe there's culture issues. You can tell that there's an unhealthy culture, but you're really not sure where it's not aligning. Go back to your personal core values, and are they aligning with the business? And then if they've drifted, realign them. And how do you do that? You set clear expectations. You communicate that vision and those core values to your teams so that they can also thrive and succeed under that. Remember, if you don't set clear expectations for people, they're constantly shooting for a moving target. So how do you define your personal core values? The first thing that I say is, what is it that you look in others and see that you respect and love? I had someone tell me one time, Amy, you walk into the room and what do you look for? And I said to them, I said, if I see someone talking and the other person isn't talking that they're standing next to, guess what? I probably don't want to talk to that person because they're not interested in knowing about that other person. And they asked me another question, and I don't remember what the question was, but what it was that I was seeing was more of an arrogance where I value humility. And so that's why one of my personal core values is humility. One of the other questions that I ask myself is, what do I regret about leading others in the past? I look back at something that maybe I did before and I didn't like how I did that. And I'll give you some examples of things that I have done. I used to be extremely direct in a unloving way. And so I like to use the term, I was leaving dead bodies in my wake. I was hurting people, not intentionally, but I was doing it all in the name of being a leader. And so as I'm leaving these dead bodies in my wake, I finally stopped and I'm like, I'm leading alone. There's no one with me. And so that's why wisdom came. That's why my core value of wisdom was put into place, because I needed people. I needed other people because I don't always think, it's just like my husband and I. He and I are totally different personalities, but I need his wisdom because I am more of a like take action kind of person. Like, hey, I need to do this. Hey, we need to do this. We need to do that. But he's more of a, let's think about that. Let's talk about this and talk through the pros and the cons. And sometimes I'm like, I just want to make a decision, but he's like, pump the brakes, babe. So I really appreciate the wisdom that I get from my husband. And that's why it is a core value of mine. Another great question to ask yourself is, what was a time that you were most proud of how you led a team? Why is that important? Because you got to see what it was that worked well, and how that becomes one of your core values. And for me, it was serving others. The greatest thing, the most proud I was ever of my teams, or ever of how I led my teams, was when I started creating leadership structures within my teams and made sure that, again, it goes back to humility as well for me. One of my other core values was I was leading people, but I wasn't leading people. I was leading leaders who were leading leaders who were leading leaders who were leading people. And what I mean by that, I was proud because they operated without me. They didn't need me. They did not need me, but I was still their leader and I poured into them and I helped them be great leaders so that then they in turn can do the same for other people. And to me, that is serving other people. And that was part of faith. I believe that all of us, my personal belief is that we're all supposed to equip people for the work of ministry, whether that's within the business. You want to equip people for your business, right? You want people to be equipped. You want to invest in them. You want them to learn so that they succeed within your organization. And that's what I did. So to wrap this up, I just have a couple of challenges for you. The first question is, look at your core values when you started your business or as a leader, right? And where have you drifted? Where do you need to align and correct? I do this on a regular basis. About once a month, I go back to the things that I'm doing in my business, and I go, okay, is this aligned to this? Is this aligned to this? Is this aligned to this? And I also meet with my advisors every 2 months, and I ask them, hey, am I aligned? Because it's important to stay aligned to my core values for myself. Leadership isn't about perfection. I'm going to say that again, because this is important. Leadership isn't about perfection. The truth is you're never going to be a perfect leader. I'm never going to be a perfect leader. But what we can do is course correct and align ourselves to our core values so that we can lead in the best way that we possibly can. Because when you align yourself to your core values, you are going to show up as your best version of yourself. So, how can we help you today in aligning your core values? Well, it's pretty simple. Write them down again. Make yourself a pro and con list of how you're leading right now. How are your pros aligning and how are your cons aligning? Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. You started your business full of fire, so why does it feel like you're building completely alone? The hardest part of entrepreneurship isn't the work, it's the silence. The decisions with no one in your corner, the questions with no one qualified to answer them. That's why I created the Boardroom, a hybrid mentorship and membership community for women in business who refuse to figure it out alone. A real community, real mentorship, and real women who want to see you win. No more isolation, no more second guessing, just you, your seat at the table, and a room full of women ready to rise with you. The Boardroom is open. Come take your seat.